Hello, my friends. The Buddhists have this idea of great doubt. And usually when we hear that thought, we think, what in the world? This must be the most terrible thing of all. To be immersed in great doubt. What could that even mean? Well, today I wanted to share some thoughts about great doubt and why it could be one of the most important things that we can cultivate in our lives. Hi, friends. My name is Kenton Whitman, and together with my family, we aim to share wilderness skills, mindfulness practices, wild edible plants, family adventures, and skills that break you free from the limits of civilized life. Join us by subscribing to our channel and joining our YouTube family. If you're familiar at all with meditation and mindfulness, you've probably heard that thought about seeing our thoughts as if they are clouds passing by in the sky. From the beginning to the end of this video, the cloudscape will change because all of those clouds are moving. You could imagine what would happen if we got attached to one of those clouds and we had to just be there with that cloud. Not only would we have to start running very fast to keep up with it, but that cloud is ever shifting and ever changing. So there's no way we can cling to it. It's the same with our thoughts. We might know better, but still, usually most of us, we tend to cling to our thoughts. A thought comes by in our mind and we grab onto it. It becomes something that tears us up inside or gets us angry or frustrated or starts getting us trying to blame another person or blame ourselves. Or there may be good thoughts, like a feeling of happiness that we try to cling to. We say, I always want to be happy. And then we, of course, become very disappointed when the world, in its natural way, shifts so that we find ourselves not quite as happy. And one of the thoughts that we cling to often most desperately in our lives are a realm of thoughts that we could classify as beliefs. And these beliefs, these are something that operates largely unseen and not understood inside of our mind's activity. But those beliefs dictate so much about how we interact with the world. So unless we understand the nature of beliefs and we perhaps entertain that some great doubt might be of benefit to us, then we will find ourselves led around by our beliefs. We believe this and it will pull our actions in that direction. And we will often find ourselves behaving in ways that we know are not for the best, for ourselves, for others around us, for the world. But we do this because we are clinging to a belief. And to understand beliefs, we have to understand how we gain knowledge and what kinds of knowledge we can hold inside of our mind. If you look online, you're going to find all sorts of people talking about different breakdowns of knowledge. But I am going to suggest that there are only 3 types of knowledge. And as we look at these 3, we outline them and we understand them, we will come to a deeper understanding of our own nature, our own thinking, our own beliefs. I'm going to break these into tiers. And I don't often like to talk in better or worse, but for the sake of this understanding, I am going to suggest that there is a 3rd tier of knowledge that is the weakest type of knowledge we can hold, that there's a 2nd tier knowledge, which is a little bit stronger, and there's a 1st tier knowledge, which is the most reliable and the strongest we can have. I'll get to the bad news right away. That is that almost all of the knowledge that we hold in our minds as information tends to be 3rd tier knowledge. 3rd tier knowledge is simply knowledge that we have gained from hearsay. It is secondhand knowledge. We have heard somebody say something, and then we believe it to be true. A simple example, maybe a silly example, would be that I walk home after filming this, and Rebecca says, "Ketan, you just missed it. A giraffe walked through our yard." Now, I may trust the source very, very deeply, and yet this is still third-tier knowledge. None of my own senses perceived that giraffe. It's just something that I heard existed. And if you think for a moment about all the things that you know, consider how many of those things are third-tier knowledge that you have heard and accepted based on somebody else's witnessing. And you have chosen to trust that person. This knowledge is all around us. I know that some people who watch do not believe that the moon is a big rock floating in the sky. I happen to believe that it's a big rock floating in the sky, in orbit around the Earth. And I've chosen to trust the people that have told me that, and the many sources that document that. And yet, I personally, I don't have any direct knowledge that the moon is not made of cheese. I've never been there. I haven't tasted any moon surface. All I have to go on is this little orb in the sky as far as my direct sensory experience. Everything else I've accepted as third-tier knowledge based on the assertions of others. Basically, any knowledge that I get online from Wikipedia, from Princeton University, from any source that you choose to look at online, it doesn't matter how authoritative it is. It still is this third-tier knowledge, and that it is the accounts of others for which I do not have personal knowledge. And we use this all the time. If I've had Lyme disease before, so I look online or I speak to a doctor, I read studies. These are all the witnessing of other people, and I accept some of that, and then I decide on a treatment based on that third-tier knowledge. Does Lyme disease even exist? I believe it does. I believe it's because of a spirochete. Do I know this? No. In fact, I'm going to say that there is nothing in this third-tier knowledge realm that we can truly know. We can believe it. We can believe it with all the fervent strength of our heart. But do we know it? It's only the accounts of others. Now, I promised a slightly better type of knowledge. And I'm going to qualify that word better in a little bit here. But this is second-tier knowledge. To use that original silly example, I walk up after filming this video, and I say hello to Rebecca, and I look out, and we see a giraffe walking through the yard. This is something I'm seeing with my own eyes. And this is a qualitatively slightly different type of knowledge than that third-tier knowledge. Now I have experienced it with my own senses. Think about how much of your knowledge is based on this second-tier type of knowledge. You'll find that there's a fair amount that you intake every day. Everything is brought in through your senses, but a lot of what is brought in through our senses is the ideas or opinions of others, that third-tier knowledge. How much of it is the actual sensations that we're experiencing without that added layer of it being hearsay? So I can say that there are crickets around me, and I'm basing this on the sound that you can hear as well, that I'm hearing. So that might qualify as second-tier knowledge. But you're probably already seeing how this second tier knowledge is not all that strong either. Because, well, we've all learned, if you've ever looked through a book of optical illusions, or we have learned a little bit about how the memory works, that what we take in with our senses is very, very filtered. So when I see that giraffe in the yard, I can be pretty sure it was a giraffe, but still, maybe not entirely sure. Because I know there are all kinds of things, hypnosis, drugs, optical illusions, my own imagination, that can color my perceptions. And in fact, the more we explore mindfulness, the more that we start to learn that what we see and take in with our senses every day is maybe this much actual sensory truth and this much belief and bias and our ideas. Am I 100% positive these are crickets? Not 100%. Could it be some other insect? Have I experienced it with any other sense besides my hearing? No. As you can see, I can start to gather more information with my senses. And this, I would argue, is a qualitatively different quest than gathering more third tier knowledge. A lot of us, if we want to prove that the world is flat, we can go online and we can gather all sorts of third tier knowledge and gather it and gather it and gather it. That's going to be a little bit different than any knowledge we get through our own senses. But again, very important to point out that second tier knowledge, although it seems way better than third tier knowledge, the truth is that most of us take that third tier knowledge and we infuse our second tier knowledge so strongly with that third tier knowledge that we tend to see what the third tier knowledge tells us. So if I've been told ahead of time by a source that I trust that a person that I'm going to meet is really kind of mean underneath. They'll seem nice on the outside, but underneath they're just looking at you and judging you and picking you apart. If I go into that situation like that, I may see that person and their actions and their words very differently than if I had been told this person is the second Mother Teresa, the nicest person you will ever meet. Then I'm probably going to interpret those same actions from that person very, very differently. We'll strengthen our second tier knowledge by trying to go out and gather our own sensory information. My next step with these crickets or with the giraffe would be to go and see if other senses confirm what my visual ones did. Can I go out in that yard and find the giraffe's tracks? Can I feel them? What can I learn about them? Can I find some poop, smell it? Now that experience is becoming very real and verified by more and more of my senses. If I go and look for these crickets and I find one and I hold one and I have that entire sensory experience that has touch, hearing, visuals, then I've got a lot more going for me. But nevertheless, our senses are very easy to deceive. So this second tier knowledge is not something that should break us free of that great doubt, because it's so easy to manipulate. Then how could there be first tier knowledge? What is there beyond seeing with our own senses? And if you've explored deep meditation or mindfulness to a high degree, or non-dualism especially, then you'll know that people will speak about sensing the world around them without attaching third tier knowledge. In other words, what happens when I sensorily experience this cricket sound, this thing I'm labeling cricket sound, but I do it without that label. I do it without any belief of what is making that sound. I do it without any assumptions, then there is that sound. And that sound, that is a first tier knowledge. That is an actual direct experience without any overlaying of ideas, of opinions, of biases, of assumptions. This is perhaps the purest way of seeing the world. It is very difficult to achieve because our mind wants to latch on to belief. Our mind wants to take that third tier knowledge and apply it to everything. It doesn't really trust our pure sensory experience. That is perhaps why when someone achieves this, if even for a moment, they will speak about the world suddenly making sense. It makes sense because our mind isn't overlaying all kinds of ideas and beliefs over everything. Thus, they say that the world looks more vibrant, more saturated, more pure. That is because we are seeing with our senses, we're experiencing with our senses without any filter in between our senses and that experience. This first tier knowledge is a wonderful thing to attain because it gives us a clarity of the world that the other two cannot offer. However, even it teaches us great doubt because there is nothing attached to it. There is simply the experience and no belief attached to that experience. The doubt is in a way the opposite of belief. So though I have this sound, there's nothing to latch onto about it. There's no question even necessary of it being real or not real, a cricket or a grasshopper, a frog or a bird. Now, if we can find ourselves a little bit of that first tier knowledge, then in the same way that third tier knowledge trickles up into second tier knowledge to change it and shape it, the first tier knowledge trickles down to affect our second and our third tier knowledge. That first tier knowledge, it doesn't attach itself. So it says, all right, here is that sound. There's the pure sound. Now, the second tier knowledge is, I can say, I can believe that to be a cricket. But I'm saying I believe it to be a cricket, not I know it to be a cricket. I'm choosing this belief. And then in the third tier knowledge, it becomes a lot easier to hear the thoughts and opinions of others because we know those are just their thoughts and their opinions. The ideas and the assumptions that they have accepted about the world based on their past experience. How can I be angry with somebody about their idea if I don't have to defend my idea? If I know that my idea is only a belief that I hold. And here is why that great doubt can be so beneficial. Because it's a viable question to say, well, if my mind seems to be designed to attach belief, attach meaning, attach assumption and biases to all of my experiences, why should I fight that? Why should I have great doubt instead of just grabbing onto a belief and holding onto it? You can probably see from my mannerisms a little bit of what happens when we hold to beliefs. You've probably experienced it yourself. When someone talks about, perhaps very fervently, a belief that you find to be ridiculous or obviously untrue, and you can feel a tension and an anger grow inside of you. That is because we have our own beliefs and we're hearing input that goes against those beliefs. If we are able to have a little bit of first tier energy, then when we hear those beliefs, we know those are just words I'm hearing. And I can believe that those words come from another person and that those words describe their beliefs and the ideas that they've formed about the world from their, as I said, past experiences. So that, my friends, is why these third and second tier knowledges can create so much conflict. They are the essence of why we have arguments, why we have wars, why we have the mindset where someone could do something horrible to another creature or person for money. This is a way of thinking of the world that is very attached, that spends so much energy running after clouds and wishing that they would stay the same. But here we are in this beautiful, organic, messy world. In this world, if we can learn to see it and love it in its organic messiness, so much weight comes off of our shoulders. The moment you start loving your spouse for their organic messiness, you are going to have such a different relationship with them than you will if you imagine them as a cloud that's always going to stay the same. You're going to appreciate whatever mood they're in, whatever experience they're having, however they look in this moment. So this is just a suggestion that all of us could benefit a little bit from some great doubt, from looking at knowledge that we have and asking, what tier of knowledge is it? And then questioning our own ideas, our own beliefs, our own motives, infusing some of that great doubt, and then seeing what happens. You will not, I promise, lose your ability to believe in things. That is the province of the ninja Jedi Zen masters, who spend a lot of time and life energy deeply exploring their mindset. That's not going to happen for me, and it's unlikely to happen for you unless you drop everything right now and devote your entire life to it. So don't worry, you will still have beliefs. You're not losing those, and they'll be operating inside of you. But even a little bit of that great doubt will give you the ability to look at your beliefs a little bit more lightly. And then you may find that you're less angry at other people, that you are less defensive in your life, that the world around you seems a little bit more playful and a little more curious. In fact, you may find that judgment, which is the province of third and second tier knowledge, begins to fade out to some extent. Again, you won't lose it all, so don't worry. But it begins to fade out and give you a foothold for having curiosity in your life. Curiosity is the emotion that develops out of that first tier knowledge. And curiosity makes the world amazingly wonderful. We start to look around us and explore and wonder about this, instead of just trudging through life, trying to prove that our latest belief, that our latest thought, our latest idea is right. My friends, tell me what you think of this. Give me some examples of places where you have held onto third tier belief as if it was second, or where you were so convinced of second tier belief that you thought it to be absolutely real. And I would love to hear if anybody's willing to share. I know some people don't really want to share these types of experiences, but if you've ever had a first tier knowledge experience, some people would call it an awakening or enlightenment experience, even if it has just been for a few seconds or a few moments, I would love to hear about that experience in the comments. Love to you all, my friends. Cannot wait to talk with you down in the comments.